why isn't the Canadian government acting in line with what Canadians actually think about Palestine? Because even if they ignore basic morality and ethics that should compel them to take concrete action and only base their decisions on stuff like polls, a new poll from the Angus Reid Institute shows that half of Canadians, 52%, now say correctly that Israel is committing genocide against Palestinians. And Canada is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which carries with it an obligation to prevent genocide. And still, this is how Mark Carney responded when asked about taking concrete action against Israel, such as sanctions, on Friday.
Prime Minister, are sanctions on the table against Israel? Is that being discussed?
Look, there's various routes, immediate assistance, the work we're doing, as I say, with partners. We've made announcements. I'm not on the cusp of making another announcement at this point.
Yeah, when he said that he's not on the cusp of making another announcement, that means that sanctions are not currently planned. Even as the Commissioner General of UNRWA shared today that at least 100 children in Gaza have died due to starvation and malnutrition. That is starvation and malnutrition that is directly caused by Israel's blockade of humanitarian aid. It is right there. They just have to let it in. Now, beyond it being obviously factually correct that Israel's blockade is responsible for that starvation, if the Canadian government needs to hear it from the polls, Canadians also know that's accurate. The poll that I'm citing in this video is brand new. It came out 5 days ago. So this is a decent snapshot of the current Canadian mood when it comes to this genocide. Most Canadians believe, correctly, that Israel is intentionally obstructing the supply of food and aid to civilians in Gaza. 61% agree with that characterization. And that's on top of the figure I mentioned earlier, which is that 52% of Canadians now say correctly that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. A majority also want the Canadian government to do more to ensure that it is not selling lethal military equipment to Israel. This comes after a bombshell report found that Canadian bullets and F-35 parts, to name a few of the arms being shipped, were being shipped to Israel. While the government alleged these bullets were non-lethal and for training purposes and that no arms were being shipped that could be used in Gaza, that seems to be predicated on Israel basically saying, trust me, bro. And on top of that, the Israeli tax authority classified what our government described as paintball-style projectiles as bullets, even though that tax authority has a separate classification for paintball markers and similar non-lethal arms. This is why many Canadians have called for a full two-way arms embargo, which, as one Canadian senator explained, means, quote, no flows of military equipment and parts between Canada and Israel, lethal and non-lethal, for training or use in battle, deployed in Gaza or elsewhere, shipped directly or indirectly. Because why the hell are we selling arms to Israel to train its military during a genocide? To date, all Canada has done is sanction individual far-right ministers within Netanyahu's genocidal government, sanction Israeli individual settlers for violence in the West Bank, pledge to conditionally acknowledge the state of Palestine in September, and we've airdropped a bit of aid, which is an extremely ineffective method of aid delivery and has landed on and killed Palestinians. Canada has also issued several statements with no concrete actions behind them, including choosing to respond to Israel murdering several Al Jazeera journalists with a repost of a grammatically incorrect tweet. Canada, as I mentioned earlier, is a signatory to the Genocide Convention. Human rights groups, including Israeli ones, say this is a genocide. UN special rapporteurs say this is a genocide. Most Canadians say this is a genocide. And now Netanyahu is musing about further ethnically cleansing Gaza by sending Palestinians to war-torn South Sudan, which for the record is facing its own massive famine, which I should do a better job of covering. And headlines framed this as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying he will, quote, allow Palestinians to leave. States that are signatories to the Genocide Convention have obligations. That includes an obligation to prevent and punish genocide. And as Mark Carney just said himself, we are not on the cusp of taking any concrete action, such as issuing sanctions against Israel. Anyway, if Mark Carney and Anita Anand won't respond to basic principles of morality and ethics, or to the obligations we have under international agreements we've signed, maybe they'll consider responding to a poll. What do you think of all this?